On the morning of April 5th, 2004, something unimaginable happened in the calm, cobblestone streets of Stavanger, Norway, in broad daylight. In the heart of one of Europe's safest nations, a team of masked men launched a full-scale military-style assault on the country's central cash depot. They were armed with AK-47s, body armor, and explosives. They didn't whisper demands. They shouted them while unloading over 120 rounds of gunfire into a peaceful city center. People screamed and ran for their lives. Police officers were pinned down behind vehicles. And within minutes, a nation's innocence was shattered forever. This was the NOKAS Robbery, not just a heist, but a battlefield. Not just a crime, but a message. What drove this group of men to turn a quiet Monday morning into one of the darkest days in Norwegian criminal history? And how did the mastermind behind it, David Taske, go from a petty criminal to the architect of the country's most violent and controversial robbery? This story will shake you. At the center of this crime was NOKAS, short for Norse Continent Service. This was Norway's central cash storage and distribution facility. It supplied banks, ATMs, and businesses across the country with literal tons of physical money. Every week, millions in Norwegian kroner would arrive by armored truck and be secured inside the NOKAS vault. And behind that vault was an outdated security system, understaffed guards, and a belief that something like this could never happen in Norway. It was the perfect storm, and David Taske saw it for exactly what it was: an open door wearing a suit of steel. David Taske wasn't born a monster, but over time, he learned how to become one. By his mid-20s, he'd already been connected to multiple robberies across Europe. He was calculated, detached, and fluent in multiple languages. But more importantly, he was obsessed with control. He didn't just want money. He wanted the kind of score that would make him untouchable. He studied NOKAS for months. Not just the building, but the city, the police response times, the camera angles, even the weather forecast. He wasn't building a robbery. He was building a battlefield. Taske didn't need just any crew. He needed men who could follow orders like soldiers. So he recruited from a network of hardened criminals, former gang members, and outlaws who understood this wasn't a smash and grab. This was a full-blown war mission. The final team included Erling Havna, a former world champion kickboxer turned enforcer; Ikmet Kudzadsko, known for his role in planning logistics and vehicles; Johnny Thindrup, a man with connections to Denmark's criminal underworld; and several others, each with a defined role: weapons expert, driver, crowd control, vault breach. They weren't just robbers. They were a paramilitary unit in disguise. On April 4th, the night before the heist, the crew broke into an elementary school across the street from NOKAS. They brought duffel bags full of weapons, cut the telephone and security lines in nearby buildings, prepared stolen police radios, and disguised getaway cars with false license plates. From the roof of the school, they had a perfect vantage point of the NOKAS building, the streets, and the timing of the police patrols. They weren't improvising. They were calculating every second. By dawn, the city was waking up. But none of them knew that within 30 minutes, their streets would be filled with gunfire. At exactly 8 a.m., the NOKAS robbery began. The crew moved fast. 12 men in coordinated positions, dressed in black body armor, ski masks, and carrying fully automatic weapons. Their first move: disable the area. They set spike strips around police stations, rammed getaway vehicles into intersections to cause traffic gridlock, threw smoke grenades in key locations. Then, they stormed NOKAS. One robber used a sledgehammer to break bulletproof glass, a task that took longer than expected and caused panic inside. Employees hit silent alarms. Security footage began rolling. Inside, they fired into the ceiling and shouted at workers to get on the floor. Tear gas filled the room as the robbers forced their way toward the vault. But outside, the real war was just beginning. Police arrived at the scene within minutes and instantly found themselves outgunned. The robbers opened fire on responding officers, spraying bullets across Donkerplassen, the city's central square. One officer, Tor Eikeland, was caught in the chaos. He took a bullet to the head and died almost instantly. It was the first time in over 20 years that a police officer had been killed in action in Norway. To civilians nearby, it was a scene straight out of a war film. Shell casings covered the ground. Storefronts were riddled with bullets. People were sobbing in doorways, unsure if they would survive. This wasn't just a robbery anymore. It was terrorism. After finally accessing the vault, the robbers filled dozens of duffel bags with money, totaling 57.4 million kroner, or around $13 million USD. They fled in coordinated getaway cars that had been pre-positioned all across Stavanger. Some headed for the city outskirts. Others took rural roads and abandoned their vehicles to switch cars multiple times. Tosca and key members fled out of the country entirely. For a moment, it looked like they had escaped into the mist. But they hadn't accounted for the storm coming next. Within hours, NOKAS became the epicenter of Norway's largest criminal investigation. Over 70 officers were assigned to a full-time task force. Interpol was alerted. DNA evidence was gathered from cigarette butts left in the school the night before. Forensic teams reconstructed every second of the heist using thousands of camera angles. CCTV from ATMs, street corners, private businesses, all combined into a master timeline. They even recreated the sounds of gunfire to match bullet trajectory. And slowly, the net began to tighten. In Spain, Tosca was finally found hiding in a luxury apartment with fake IDs and a small arsenal of weapons. When police raided the building, he reportedly didn't resist. Why? Because in his mind, the mission had already succeeded. Even in custody, Tosca behaved like a general who had pulled off a daring campaign. Calm, methodical, even proud. He confessed to planning the robbery, but never once apologized for the death of Officer Eikeland. For Tosca, it was never personal. It was just strategy. In court, the men behind the NOKAS Robbery stood before the nation. Some looked indifferent, others cracked smiles, but none of them showed true remorse. 13 men were convicted. David Tosca received 19 years in prison. Others received between 4 and 16 years, depending on their role. Several million kroner were never recovered. And despite the harsh sentencing, the stolen money, the loss of life, and the trauma remain etched into Norwegian memory forever. What happened on April 5, 2004, was more than a robbery. It was a message, a declaration that even the safest places can bleed. David Tosca didn't just steal money. He stole Norway's sense of peace. The NOKAS robbery exposed something terrifying. That sometimes, the most dangerous criminals aren't the loudest or the wildest. They're the ones who plan in silence, who treat life like a chessboard, and who believe that violence is just a tool. In the aftermath, Norway rebuilt its security systems, changed its laws, modernized its response units. But what can't be changed is the haunting knowledge that all it takes is one morning, one team, and one cold mind. And a city turns into a war zone. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a mission that went exactly as planned. And when you pull off the perfect plan in a country that thought it was invincible, you don't just become a criminal. You become a symbol of fear.